قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا، حني قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا، يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا، يا هلا ويا هلا ويا.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Let's Talk on this Wednesday morning. We're coming through to you live from our Sunning Hill studios in Johannesburg. This is ITV Networks. Lovely to have you in our company. We will be together till 10 o'clock. And as it is the Mubarak month of Ramadan, our focus is on mercy, emancipation, love and forgiveness. And that's what we're going to be focusing on in the show this morning by talking to Amnesty International. We're also going to be looking at fitness in the month of Ramadan, and we'll be wrapping up by talking to Dr. Shahida Umar about Child Protection Week. So you can see the thread of forgiveness, love, mercy and emancipation in two of our issues or two of our interviews this morning. So do stay with us and do become a part of the conversation. Our first guest is Shanila Mohammed. She is holds a huge portfolio. She is with Amnesty International. She has just been appointed their director. I think I've got that right. We'll just check out with her. She's just been appointed as the director of Amnesty International South Africa. Let's find out what it is that she's meant to be doing in that position and what does that mean for South Africa as a whole. Shanila Mohammed, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the program.
Wa alaikum salam, Julie. Thank you so much for having me.
Congratulations. I believe you're in your job for just over a month. Huge position, undoubtedly. Amnesty International is an international organization. So let's understand before we get there, who is Shanila Mohammed?
So, yes, alhamdulillah, I'm very grateful to Allah for the opportunities that have come my way. But, I mean, who is Shanila Mohammed? I think I'm just a Muslim girl or woman like many of us out there, but I'm also first and foremost a Muslim and a woman. So for me, I think that, I was born in Pakistan. That is where my mother comes from. My father comes from India, from Shimla. So, there's that movement. But, when I was 1 year old, my parents were living in Zimbabwe, and that's where I grew up. So I grew up in Zimbabwe. I consider myself to be Zimbabwean of Pakistani origin. And now I've been living in South Africa for the past 16 years.
You have just been appointed the director of Amnesty International. And I have no doubt to be holding that position, you must have a strong background in human rights issues. When, how did that come about, and what were your previous positions in this field?
So, Julie, I am originally a journalist, and I will always be one. That is my passion, that is my love. So I sort of worked my way up the ladder as a journalist. So I've held positions like Europe Middle East editor for Interpress Services. I was the deputy director for the BBC Africa Media Initiative. I also spent 7 years in Dubai as bureau chief for the Northern Emirates for the Gulf News, where I covered the first Gulf War. So in media, I've basically held a number of positions, but my passion has always been human rights. And I think partially because I came from a violent home. My father was quite violent. I had so I grew up in an element of hostility and violence, and I always had this passion for human rights and
fixing the situation making sure that women and children are in safe environments.
Yes. And so I think at some point during my journalism career, I decided that, I didn't just want to report. on the issues. I really wanted to be part and parcel of the change. So I wanted to be the change that I talked about. And so at the time I was working with Oxfam as a regional media and advocacy coordinator. And I then applied for a position that they had for South Africa director. And it was the first time ever in Oxfam history that somebody had crossed over from a communications media background into program and leadership and management. And so in a sense, I sort of made history there because, you know, somebody moved over and I was actually appointed South Africa director for Oxfam. And that was the start of my journey, really, in the field of really playing an active role in human rights and not just sitting on the sidelines and watching it all unfold. And I think that's where I am today. So previous roles I've had, you know, I've worked as Africa Director for a human rights organization in New York called Outright Action International. I've worked as, I headed a program in Zimbabwe for HIVOS International Media Support and differed on the elections, on media and governance. And, you know, today I'm blessed to be, have been appointed Executive Director for Amnesty International.
We'll get to Amnesty in a minute or two. Let's talk about the highlights in your previous positions and the impact that it has made, not only in your life, but those around you.
Well, I think, you know, for me, I firmly do believe that, you know, we have got to live the lives that we talk about. And I think, again, if you look at our world as Muslims, you know, as Muslims, we are very, very, we're taught that Islam is a way of life. And I think to some extent I've embraced that to the point where I make sure that, and I've always brought up my children to believe, and in a way where I've said to them, you know, it's all about how you live your life and how you treat people. And I think that, you know, being able to influence the lives of people has been really important. And if you look at Africa, and even if you look at the worlds we come from, look at what's happening with Islam at the moment, look at the situation facing women and children in Africa, in particular in South Africa at the moment, we have a spate of violence. You know, that is the one thing that has distressed us. Every morning as women, we wake up. And in fact, somebody said to me the other day, you know, nowadays it's not just about reading about the violence against women and children in the newspapers. Nowadays, it's about people you know. You know, you come across people you know. And so for me, I think my job has allowed me to really play a role where I'm supporting women's organizations, children's organizations, and also human rights organizations to hold governments to account, to hold leaders to account, to provide the things that they've promised. And one of those is a safe and secure environment for women and children. That has not been delivered in South Africa. The fact that women are being brutalized and children are being brutalized as little as 8 months or 9-month-old babies means that there's something drastically wrong. And, you know, for me, I think that one of the steps that has to be taken is to really look at why the South African society does the things that it does.
We're talking South Africa particularly simply because you are now director of Amnesty International. You've also traveled widely and you've seen what's happening globally. You know, there's lots of atrocities being perpetrated against women and children. Would you say that South Africa is the worst country in the world as far as these issues are concerned, or is it happening elsewhere as well? And what do you believe is the issue in South Africa that needs to be addressed? Because something is drastically wrong. We've been talking way too long about these issues, but nothing seems to have changed.
So, Julie, in answer to your question about is South Africa the worst, I would say no, but I think it's high up there. Look, I think what's happening in the Middle East with Syria, Palestine, all those things are pretty high up because, you know, children are being killed and, you know.
But that's a situation of war, obviously. So yes. in that situation, it is a little different. Not that it's acceptable, but it's different because they're in a war zone, war situation.
But then let's take us to South Africa. South Africa was in a war situation during the apartheid era, and I think, you know, there was a whole movement of fighting to bring down the apartheid government.
The invisible war.
Yes, and I've always felt that one of the challenges has been that during the apartheid era. And what apartheid did was it dehumanized people. So basically, if you were black and were not white, you were not seen as a human being. And the way in which they held people and brutalized people was by taking away the human face. So, you were just a black mass, you were a movement of black people who were causing trouble. And I think nobody has ever unpacked the psychological damage. And I'm not saying nobody, I'm sure there have been studies and things that have been done there, but I think post-apartheid, Mandela did try to bring back that human face and the forgiveness and, all of that. But I think the trauma that was inflicted on a nation was never dealt with. And so now you have a dehumanization of people. So when you look at a rape case, if you look at what is done to children here and what is done to women here, sometimes you stand back and you think, wow, one human being was able to do that to the other. I mean, we had a case the other day of a pregnant woman who was raped by 11 men. So you think, what was going through the minds of those men when they were raping this woman who was carrying a baby inside of her? So there's something terribly wrong. And I think part of our work as human rights defenders and as women's rights activists is we've really got to start targeting men. And we've got to start understanding that psyche. What is it that is driving men to do the things that they're doing to women and children? And, a psychologist did a report once where they looked at crime in South Africa, and they said that, when a perpetrator, for example, breaks into your home and he sees a vulnerable woman there, immediately he thinks to himself, well, you know what, I'm already in trouble. I've broken into this house. I'm going to get into trouble anyway. I might as well do everything. And suddenly the victim cease to be human for them, and they become just things that need to be done. And I think there's a dangerous psyche out there, and we can carry on talking for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, but unless we go to the root cause of violence, and part of it is inequality. Part of it is the fact that men have now, they can't get jobs. They've become a lot less. Women are the roles of men and women have changed. So there's a lot in society that has changed. And we need to really understand what is going on with the men in South Africa that is making them do all of this.
Powerful stuff indeed. Lots to think about, lots to talk about, lots to unpack, and we'll do all of that right after the ad break. I'm talking to Shanila Mohammed. She has just been appointed as Director of Amnesty International South Africa. We're talking about her role and what she's going to be changing at Amnesty International going forward. But first, an ad break. This is Let's Talk. Our first guest is Shanila Mohammed, and she's touched on quite a raw nerve. No doubt Dr. Shaida Umar, in the final interview for this morning, will pick up on the same thread, talking about Child Protection Week, and that's what we'll concentrate on with Dr. Shaida Umar. Right now we're talking to Shanila Mohammed. We're talking about Amnesty International. She's just been appointed the country director and what her role will be here in South Africa. We've talked about the psyche of men, and you were talking about the study that's been conducted. Do you believe that gives men the green light to retaliate the way they do? And of course, we're not generalizing. We're talking about the subsection of society that behaves so badly towards women and children.
Julie, I think there are a number of factors. The fact that inequality, unemployment and poverty are the three major issues that are affecting the South African people at the moment does play into the way in which men, the relationship between men and women. In addition to that, we come from a patriarchal society where women already are seen in an inferior or in a less position to men. But then add to that the fact that roles have changed. Look at us in the Muslim world. I myself am a single mother who have brought up 2 children by myself, so without any help. So the roles of women have changed. And in the days long ago, in our mothers' days, it was a clear definition of roles. Women came in and they had children, they ran the home, they cooked, they did what was meant to be doing.
Subservient.
Exactly. And now women are still expected to do that, but at the same time, they're expected to hold jobs, they're expected to bring in money, they're expected to do everything that a man does. And so women are, again, having a look at their own positions, and they're asserting themselves a lot more. And I think that is being challenged. But I also think that there is definitely I think, no, it does not give men the right. And I think, if you look at the Islamic religion, there's nothing there that gives men, or maybe I'm just interpreting it for myself, but, I would say that, the fact that men feel that they can beat up on women, and again, it's a generalization.
And that has absolutely nothing to do with Islam.
No.
Alhamdulillah, 1438 years ago, our beloved Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam came along and emancipated women on the command of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. So that has got absolutely nothing to do with the religion. It's those men, whoever they are, whatever religion, color or creed they come from, who feel that obviously self-esteem issues or whatever it is, whatever wrong is going on in their lives, believe that they need to hit out on the most vulnerable around them, and that is women and children. That being said, like I've said, we're going to pick up this thread with Dr. Shaida Umar. Let's look at Amnesty International. Let's look at your brief and what are you going to be doing currently and possibly changing going forward?
Well, Amnesty International, I don't know if your viewers know much about it, but we are a global movement of people who take injustice personally. And, that's why I love it, because I have always taken injustice personally. And so we're a global movement. And any one of your viewers or your listeners are welcome to join us. We're a movement. And we're a movement at the moment of 7 million people globally. We're hoping by 2020 to increase that to 25 million. And that's one of the things that I would like to do as Amnesty in South Africa, is really up the membership of Amnesty. And Amnesty came about in 1961 when a lawyer, Peter Benenson, actually read up on a case of 2 students who had been arrested. I think it was in the Netherlands or in Germany, but they were arrested because they had raised a toast to freedom. It was just after the Second World War. And so basically they were arrested, and he really got upset about this and wrote an article in The Observer. And that's how the whole thing started to unravel. So it was really about people's rights. So my job in South Africa, and I think that I'm really fortunate because I've been given a lot of leeway and I've been given a lot of independence to come and reposition the Amnesty program in South Africa. And again, as I said earlier, it's really taking into consideration the context of the country. We're dealing with a country with high levels of inequality that continue to rise. We're dealing with social economic challenges. We're dealing with massive levels of violence against women and children. We're dealing with, unemployment. We're dealing with levels of poverty, xenophobia, against migrant rights. So there's a lot of complex issues. So what I'm hoping to do is really build a movement in South Africa and work with others already working in human rights to try to come up with solutions to some of the challenges. You said yourself that, we've been talking about violence against women for a long time now. Why are things not changing? And in fact, every day we're waking up and we're hearing more and more and more about it. Does it mean it's on the increase, or does it mean it's just being reported better? Well, you know what? It's on the increase. That's a reality, but it's also being reported better. So I'm really hoping to join hands with organizations, with people in South Africa to really come up with solutions that are going to bring about change, that we won't be sitting here 5 years down the line and still crying about the fact that a 7-month-old baby or an 8-month-old baby has been raped.
Who should be accessing your services, and what would those services be?
So our services are basically, we support human rights defenders. So recently we just launched a campaign called the Brave Campaign, in which we basically support people who are defending human rights. Now, you know for a fact that in many countries of the world, including Zimbabwe, where I come from, if you defend human rights, you are in danger. You know, if you're a media person, you're in danger if you report on issues that the powers that be don't like. So our Brave campaign is really about supporting human rights defenders. But in addition to that, in South Africa, we have a campaign that looks at economic, social, and cultural rights. So if you're an organization or a women's rights organization that is working on those issues, then, you know, those are the types of issues that we're supporting. Recently on Africa Day, we supported a whole consortium of organizations that were looking at trying to combat xenophobia and really looking at, you know, bringing the whole Africa focus into South Africa, that South Africa is part of Africa, that during the apartheid era, African countries supported South Africa in their struggle. So, you know, those are the types of programs that we look at. We're also looking at minority rights. We're also looking at women's rights in focus. So if you're an organization, or if you just are normal, a person who is not part of an organization, who wants to become an Amnesty member, who wants to be a part of a human rights movement, that's, you know, you get in touch with us, because we're not just about organizations. We're about people who take injustice personally.
So if I want to make a difference in my own little way, what can I bring to the table to Amnesty International? You know, I'm sitting here thinking, how can I possibly make a difference?
One of the things, Julie, that you can do is you can, you know, Amnesty uses information, data, and research to advocate for change. So, you know, if you see injustice happening in your world and you are passionate about doing something about it, then you get in touch with Amnesty. And we have researchers all around the world. In fact, our core business is information. Our core business is getting evidence in order to back up our advocacy and our campaigning. So one of the things you can do is let us know what's going on. Let us know what's happening. You know, I think that is one step, because, you know, if you keep quiet when all around you injustices are happening, then you are part and parcel of that injustice. And that's something that is said in Islam as well. So, you know, one of the things to do is really, you know, get in touch with our offices, get in touch with our organization, whether you're in South Africa, whether you're in another part of the world, and tell us what's happening. And then we will be able to see what is possible and what is not, or put you in touch with people who can or can't help. But I think the first step is acknowledging that injustice is happening around you.
I have no doubt that BDS works very closely with you.
Well, we do know. I know of BDS, okay, and I think that, you know, we that part of the world is you know, a part of the world that we are looking, you know, as Amnesty we look at. And really, you know, Amnesty is an organization that really focuses on human rights. So wherever there is a human rights violation, be in Palestine, be it in Syria, that is where Amnesty will be. And we're an organization that is devoid of political affiliation or religious affiliation. So when we're looking at the violation of rights, we're looking at you as a human being, and the fact that your rights have been violated. It doesn't matter what religion, what political affiliation, or where you come from.
And that's where we leave it. Please, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you with good health and long life to make a truly positive difference, not only in South Africa, but the world over. And we do know that your heart is in the right place. Thank you for being with us on the show this morning.
Thank you.
Amin Thuma, appointed as Director of Amnesty International in South Africa, talking to us about the organization and the whole issue around atrocities against women, children, and the most vulnerable in this society. Something that Dr. Shaida Umar will be picking up in her interview with us later on. But right now, let's take an ad break. And welcome back after having talked with the lovely Shanila Mohammed. Just to remind you that the final interview for this morning will be with Dr. Shaida Umar. She is the director at the Teddy Bear Clinic, and we're going to be focusing on Child Protection Week. But right now we're going to be talking to Mohammed Qasim, and he's here to talk about fitness in the month of Ramadan. He is the fitness guru, and he's going to give us all the highs and lows of continuing exercising and keeping fit in the month of Ramadan. Mohammed, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the program.
Wa alaikum salam. Thanks for having me.
Lovely to have you here. Now, the last time we spoke, you told me that you had just started, I think, a gym in Killarney, your own gym.
Yes, that's correct.
All right. Is it still running?
The gym's still running. It's been picking up really nicely. There's a good membership. There's a lot of people who are understanding what the Motivation brand is about now, which is the brand that I promote.
What's it called?
Motivation. So it's a play on
Mashallah.
the word with my nickname being Mo. Motivation is the play on the word, and we just try and get people to be motivated, to be fit, to be healthy, to live this lifestyle, to get involved in this type of a lifestyle.
Mashallah. You are, as I've said, based in Hyde Park, in Killarney, Johannesburg, and you've been running the gym for how long?
Well, it's been up and running for about 5 years now, but the past 2 years is when the brand has really started, and we've been promoting the brand and trying to get people more into this lifestyle.
So how is the Motivation gym, different to your other gyms that, are springing up all over the place? What is it that is unique or you offering which is different and more and better at your gym?
Okay, when you walk into another gym, generally the gyms are massive gyms, so you feel intimidated. There's equipment there that you have no clue how to use. So you're walking in clueless. The first place you probably go to is the treadmill, try and walk a bit, and you feel, okay, I've done some sort of a workout. When you walk into the gym at Motivation, it's completely different, where we'll guide you through everything that you need to do. We'll assess you, see what you need to do in terms of your weight loss, in terms of your fitness, in terms of muscle building, show you the ropes through every single stage of getting to the goal where you need to get to.
You keep referring to we, so I presume there's a team in place.
There is a team, because once you come into the gym, you are part of Motivation. So how it works is, of course, I am the trainer there, and everyone that I do train, they try and push everyone new that comes into the place. So you don't feel out of place, or you don't feel like
you don't belong,
intimidated, or you don't belong somewhere. We become a family, and that's what the gym is about.
Oh, mashallah, that's wonderful. And do you run from like kind of 12 hours from the morning to the evening? How does it work? 7 days a week?
So in terms of the personal training, where I will be there, it's from 5 a.m. till 7 p.m. That's Monday to Thursday. And Fridays is from 5 a.m. till just before Jummah. The gym itself is open 24 hours. So if you want to come in at any other time, then I will give you a program that you need to follow while you are there if I'm not there with you.
All right. Now, the big thing is people who are very passionate about training and keeping fit kind of wonder what to do in the month of Ramadan. I'm a walker, for example, and every year without fail, I stop walking in the month of Ramadan. And my son kind of said to me, Mummy, but it's okay, continue walking. But I don't feel right. I just feel I could use that time for extra ibadah. But, different things work for different people, obviously. I mean, I could be reading Tasbih whilst I walk, which I normally do. But your take, being Mr. Fitness himself, your take on keeping fit in the month of Ramadan, is it possible? Can you gym? Can you do all the strenuous exercise that you do out of Ramadan?
First of all, let me get to the ibadat part. Your body is an amanat given to you by Allah.
Oh,
and
well
if you
said.
look after it, it's an ibadat. So just by looking after it, there is an ibadat anyway. Okay, secondly, on your question here, Ramadan, you should keep fit. Why not? Why stop? Why wait 4 weeks and go 4 weeks back? Why regress when you can progress in Ramadan? Ramadan is a time where, especially with your diet, we eat at the same time every single day. So you can get your diet structured for the next 30 days. For a woman, for instance, who wants to lose weight, the ideal time would be about an hour before iftar. Why not go for a walk? Remember something, the body first burns off sugars, which we put in through foods, burns off carbohydrates, which again comes through foods, and then it starts burning off the fat, which is the stored energy in your body. When you have nothing in your system, the first thing it's going to target to use the energy is the fats. So why not use that time just before iftar to go out, have your walk, come back, and then put nutritious food into your body, not the savories and that everyone wants to have. Put nutritious food into your body.
I keep referring to you as Mr. Fitness, being so focused on, healthy eating, healthy gymming, keeping, focused on fitness of the mind, body and soul. You also spoke about the savories, not eating unsavory foods. Let's look at the total package, the total being for the month of Ramadan. what advice do you have for people, whether you want to keep your weight stable, whether you want to lose weight? There are also people who lose weight and would rather put on, want to focus on gaining a bit of weight in Ramadan and beyond.
Okay, let's remember something. Ramadan is only 4 weeks. Your body's not going to transform dramatically this way or that way in this 4 weeks. So what you want to try and do is get a stable diet. Something that you might not lose as much weight as you wanted to lose, or you might not gain as much weight as you wanted to gain, because it's only 4 weeks, right? So what you want to try and do is, for Seri, have your most nutritious meal. Need to have your proteins, your carbs, your water, hydrate. Ramadan, what happens to our body is we get dehydrated. And the first sign of dehydration is hunger. And that's the feeling that we get at iftar time, that we need to stuff our face with food. It is actually dehydration. Try and hydrate yourself during iftar time with half a liter of water first. From there, assess how hungry you are before you eat. I wouldn't give you portion sizes in Ramadan, because it will vary day to day depending on how hungry you are, or how much exercise you did through the day, or how strenuous your day was at work. It will vary through the day, but the most important thing in Ramadan is stay as hydrated as possible during the hours that we can drink water.
People often complain about how exhausted and tired they feel in the month of Ramadan. I've experienced that as well. What's going on there? Why is it that we're feeling that exhausted, and what ought we be doing to feel more energized?
The exhaustion is definitely going to happen, because the body is using up every last bit of nutrients that it has in it to keep you functioning for the day. But that's where the trick comes in, to be putting in the right amount of nutrients. So when I'm saying for Seri, let me just give you an ideal Seri. Have a bowl of oats, because it's sustained energy through the day. Have some egg whites, so with a yolk if you want to, because that will give you your protein, and your muscles need protein to survive, to function, to work. Otherwise they're going to feel lethargic. And then again, have that water so that your body is functioning properly. It'll probably pull you through till about 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, which is natural to then feel tired. It's been a long day, we haven't eaten the whole day, the body's got nothing in it. And I think that's also one of the key reasons for fasting, so that we actually do feel that. And then when you break your fast, break it with some kajur, so you get your natural sugars into your body. Have the water, fill yourself up with the water, and from there assess how much food you need to eat. And then when it comes to eating food, eat the wholesome things. Have a good protein, some chicken fillets, some grilled steak. Have that with maybe some sweet potato, just to put the carb back in your body, to give you the energy to pull you through the night, because our prayers are long, the tarawih is long. It will be able to pull you through the night, but I promise you, you will feel the difference in terms of your energy if you get your eating right.
People talk about losing muscle rather than, losing fat, burning fat. What's that all about? And how do you go about not losing muscle? And if you are losing muscle, is that detrimental to your health?
Okay, for me, that's probably the biggest struggle in terms of finding the balance, because I don't want to lose the muscle that I've gained through the year. I don't want to lose it in 4 weeks. Once again, like I said, it's only 4 weeks. And if you can get this nutrition right, you'll be able to feed the muscle. I'm not saying you won't lose any muscle. You might lose a kilo or 2, but you will lose some fat with it as well. So it's not your body just eating up the muscle. And you'll be able to put that on within a week or 2 after Ramadan. So it's not the end of the world if it does happen, but what you want to try and do is get as much protein into your body in the periods that we can eat, so that you can maintain all that muscle.
All right, I'm talking to Mohammed Kasim. He runs a gym in Killarney, Johannesburg called Motivation, and he's here to tell us about how to exercise in the month of Ramadan, and that it is possible to fast and also keep fit. More about that after the ad break, inshallah. Welcome back. I'm talking to Mohammed Kasim. He runs a gym in Killarney, Johannesburg. And I was just thinking off air, it's bad enough that we're so exhausted in the month of Ramadan. And here Mr. Fitness himself is saying that that is when you should possibly try and maintain your fitness levels, that is in the month of Ramadan. Don't let go. Keep on at it, because you'll remain fit, you'll remain focused, and you're not going to have a battle after the month of Ramadan. So let's continue our discussion with him. So you in agreement with that concept, with that, that you just continue gymming in the month of Ramadan?
I don't see any reason why not. We should continue gymming. You're in the groove of it. Why stop for 4 weeks? Because everybody knows to start again is the toughest thing. So there's no reason to stop. Just keep going.
Are there perhaps then specific exercises that's no in Ramadan? And I'm also thinking weightlifting. Would you recommend people do, lift weights in the month of Ramadan, knowing that they haven't eaten all day?
What I would suggest is, if you're trying to lose weight, the best time would be before iftar, so that your body is empty and it's just burning up the fat to try and lose the weight. If you're trying to maintain your muscle, the best time would be after Tarawih or before Sehri, where you know that you're going to get a meal in after your training session, which is the most important meal, as most guys who are trying to build muscle know. That is the most important meal. You don't want to be lifting weights on an empty stomach. The body's going to break the muscle down. You're susceptible to injuries. You don't want to do any of that. The best times to do it is either after Tarawih or before Sehri.
All right, let's look at the issue around the exercises that you wouldn't recommend in the month of Ramadan. And don't focus only on the guys. Think of us women as well. What should we be doing?
I don't think that anything needs to change.
Okay.
You keep doing the exercises that you're doing. Just depending on how you're feeling on the day, your intensity level can drop slightly. But again, there is no reason to stop. Just keep going, keep pushing. And for those who haven't started and they keep saying after Ramadan, Ramadan is actually the best time to start. You'll probably see the quickest results because your body's in shock from not eating anyway, and then you're exercising, your body's going to go into more shock. You're going to lose more weight than someone else who's been doing it for a long period of time.
But are you going to have the energy levels to be able to do the exercise? I'm just thinking, if I've been hungry all day and you're suggesting go for a walk in the evening before iftar, I'm just wondering about have the energy to carry
Well,
it.
I think fitness boils down to a mindset. It's more mental than it is physical. And if you can tell yourself that you'll be able to do it, the body will follow whatever the mind says. What the mind says, the body believes.
All right, let's talk about meal replacements. And we spoke about losing muscle mass and losing fat, etc. There are those people who do tend, especially the guys now, do lose weight in Ramadan. And I don't think that, well, if you have the weight to lose, good for you. But if you don't have the weight to lose and you don't want to look all gaunt and feel weak and what have you, would you suggest a meal replacement?
Meal replacements are excellent because they get those calories in that you won't be able to get with food because of the short period of time between meals that we are allowed to eat. So you want to try and keep your calories as high as possible when you're trying to maintain your muscle, because the minute you go into a calorie deficit, the body's going to eat the muscle up. So the best way to do that is with meal replacements. It is convenient. There's absolutely no side effects with it, and I don't see anything wrong during the month of Ramadan to use it. At Sehri time, using something like a casein protein, which is a slow release protein, releases over 6 hours, which means that your muscles will be fed for the next 6 hours, and it won't just be breaking down through the day. You shouldn't lose a lot of weight if you get your nutrition right.
Now, you're talking about taking the meal replacement at Sehri time. But is that not going to fill you up and prevent you from eating your breakfast? Or do you how do you plan that?
Most of the guys trying to put on muscle know that sometimes you have to actually force yourself to eat because you're more full than you can actually handle. So if you're really serious about maintaining this muscle through these 4 weeks, I suggest that even if you are full, make sure that you get everything that you need for your body to maintain what it needs to maintain.
All right, what would you say are the do's and the don'ts in the month of Ramadan as far as keeping fit is concerned?
Do's, if you were in the gym, keep going in the gym, keep your nutrition going, a lot of water, please, a lot of water. I keep reiterating this, but hydrate yourself. It's the most important thing. That's where the lethargic feeling comes from. It's because we dehydrated. So we need to keep hydrating ourselves. In terms of the don'ts, oily foods, when you break your fast, remember something, you haven't eaten the whole day and you're going to put junk, oily foods into your body. It's just going to bring you more down. You're going to feel more lethargic. Your body's going to be working extra hard to try and break it down, and that's why a lot of people find it even tougher to read their Tarawih and that, because they're so tired and they're so exhausted from the heavy meal that they had at iftar time.
Now, I don't know if your gym has a swimming pool, but a lot of the other gyms do. Do you, would you advise swimming in the month of Ramadan?
I don't think there's anything wrong in terms of the body, but you got to be extra careful that the water doesn't go into your nose or into your mouth and then your fast breaks. So there is a risk of that happening, and when anything puts your fast at risk, then I just say rather don't do it.
Rather don't.
Yeah.
Anything else in closing you'd like to share with our listeners this morning regarding keeping fit in the month of Ramadan, fit and healthy?
Please, everyone, just stop thinking that we're not going to have the energy to do it. Everything comes from your mind, and if you can believe that you're going to be able to do it, the body will follow, and you will see amazing results in Ramadan, purely based on the fact that our eating times are at the exact same time every single day for 30 days. You'll see amazing results, and then once you get out of Ramadan, you're already in the groove of a so-called diet, a structured diet, and it's easy to carry on with that, get to your goals.
Let's assume that people don't follow an exercise program in the month of Ramadan. I know most people can't, they don't have the time, and the focus is elsewhere, though you have very succinctly said that taking care of your body is also an ibadah, alhamdulillah. But for those people who are not bothered about gymming or keeping fit in Ramadan, how difficult is it going to be to pick up after the month of Ramadan, and what tips can you give us for picking up from where we left off?
Okay. If you stop during the month of Ramadan, like you said, set yourself a goal after Ramadan. I'm going to lose 5 kilos in 90 days.
And the keeping fit as well.
I'm going to keep fit, but I want to lose 5 kilos in 90 days. If you don't set a goal, it's very difficult to do something when there's no goal at the end of it. Keep setting those small goals, reaching those small goals. Write down, take note of all your progress. Today I walked 5 kilometers in this amount of time. Tomorrow I want to do it a minute quicker. Slow progress is better than no progress at all. Just set yourself small goals, reach those small goals, and slowly before you know it, you'll be running those 5 kilometers in no time.
All right, so goal setting is very important in anything that you want to achieve in life, and more so as far as keeping fit is concerned. But right after Ramadan, would you suggest that you kind of don't overdo it, start slow and build yourself up?
I think that's purely based on how you feel. If you feel, I'm the type of person who, when my client walks in, I throw you into the deep end and you learn to swim from there, because I don't believe getting into something slowly, you're going to waste 2 weeks just getting into it. Your body's going to go into shock anyway after Ramadan with the food coming. So take full advantage of it. Jump in the deep end. It might hurt a bit, and then you might enjoy the pain afterwards. So just keep going.
And your closing remarks to our viewers this morning?
Health and fitness, it's not just about the gym. Sometimes it is therapy, and it helps you with a lot of stress in life. A lot of people who are addicted to the gym will tell you this, that it actually takes away all the stress of work, of family, of whatever it is. The gym time is your time, and it's the time to just get your mind in focus. Look after yourself. You are the most important person. So look after yourself and look after your body. We only have one.
Wonderful. Thank you for being with us, Mohammed Qasim from Motivation in Killarney. Lovely to see you. You look an absolute picture of health. So you are testimony to the fact that taking care of yourself, your body, your mind, your soul, obviously, and regular exercise and diet does give you amazing results. Alhamdulillah.
So
remember us in your du'as, inshallah. That was Mohammed Qasim from his own gym in Killarney called Motivation, telling us that yes, it is possible and doable, and we should be continuing exercising in the month of Ramadan. So he's given us all the motivation we need, so let's get to it. Still to come, Dr. Shahida Umar from the Teddy Bear Clinic to talk about Child Protection Week, but right now we need to take an ad break. And we're into the final interview for the morning. It is Child Protection Week, and that is what we're going to be focusing on. Our first guest, Shanila Mohammed, set the scene for us by talking about Amnesty International and her passion for rights, protection of women, children, and the most vulnerable in our society. And throughout the program, I kept reminding you that Dr. Shahida Umar will be here from the Teddy Bear Clinic to talk to us about Child Protection Week. So do stay with us, and do remember you can become a part of the conversation on the open line. Dr. Shaida Umar, Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the program.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and shukran for having me on the program.
Lovely to have you once again in the studio. Shaida, it's such an indictment to us as a Muslim community, to us as society, to be sitting here in the month of Ramadan talking about Child Protection Week. We shouldn't be having these conversations. We are human beings, for goodness sake. What is it that makes us such monsters to be abusing women and particularly children? And we've been following the headlines these past few weeks, and it is atrocious what is being perpetrated on children, and girl children particularly.
Absolutely. I think what one needs to understand and appreciate is that we are not far removed from the scourge or the heinous crimes that are being committed on children and women. And the Muslim community certainly has a huge role to play. We cannot exclude the Muslim community from this because it's happening within our immediate neighborhoods and within our own homes and environments. And I think what we've said before, that it occurs across the spectrum, and it's the nicest of people. It's the imams, it's the teachers, it's the sports coach, it's the nice uncle, grandparents. Unfortunately, this is a reality that we are facing, and we need to take action against that.
Child Protection Week, we kind as Muslims believe that it's not our community's problem. We are in the Mubarak month of Ramadan. It's the month of forgiveness, love, mercy. Mercy being the key word here, and emancipation. What are the type of messages we need to be putting out there? And I'm wondering, is this all to do with the socialization of our children? What sort of messages do we give them? What do we tell them?
And you know, Julie, the one thing I always feel strongly about is that why should we be teaching children to say stop and no? Children should be protected implicitly, but unfortunately, we have to dialogue and engage with our children, making them aware and alerting them to the dangers that are existing and lurking around them. So the one thing, what I say to people every day is that we need to teach children about acceptable behaviors and unacceptable behaviors, to demonstrate it physically, where they start understanding and processing what is appropriate, what is not appropriate. Talking about safe touches and unsafe touches. We don't speak about good touches and bad touches, because the bad touches do sometimes feel good. Our bodies are programmed in such a way that if it's rubbed in a certain fashion, it's going to evoke a pleasurable sensation. And I think this is what we need to be aware of and take cognizance of when we speak to our children. So yes, the responsibility lies on everybody, and certainly on parents and primary caregivers, where they need to start speaking to their children when the children are very young. And I think people are often afraid to sexualize their children. There's a difference between sexualizing and enabling and empowering your child about sexuality and inappropriate behavioral responses. So this is what we would like to emphasize and encourage parents to start talking about body parts, the functions of the body parts. What does that body part do? And then checking out with the child, has anybody ever touched you? And should anybody touch you in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable, that makes you feel yucky? We talk to children age-appropriate language, things that they would understand, and say to them, give them the platform that it is their right to come forward and tell anybody and tell everybody until somebody actually listens to the child.
Shaida, these are very difficult conversations to have with your children, and half of us don't know how to get into these sort of conversations. So for those people watching us this morning, thinking, I need to have these conversations, but I don't know how, are there resources available that they could access to help make it easier?
Well, there are books available, but I still feel like we need to talk basics. So let's get back to basics. For parents and caregivers, the best time and routine times are when you're putting your child to bed or when you're bathing your child, to actually get the child to identify the body parts and do not use idiosyncratic phrases, but use the actual terms of the body parts, and then play the what if game with the child to say, what if daddy tickled you here? What if mommy gave you a slap on your face? Ask the child, check out with the child, and do this consistently and repeatedly. I think that is very important. There needs to be consistency. But what actually also happens is that you are giving permission to your child that it's okay to talk about sex and sexuality. It's not about sexualizing your child. But should your child have any questions in the future, he or she knows that mommy and daddy talk to me about this, so it's okay, I can go to them. In fact, when we sit and watch family viewing time, sometimes there are sensitive images that leave us as adults feeling a sense of discomfort, uncomfortable.
With our children, obviously.
Yes, and feeling quite embarrassed. And I think the immediate or the knee-jerk response is, let's just change the channel and pretend like it's not there. Or if we're driving on the street, on the roads, we see these billboards talking about teasers and there's sexually explicit images, females in their bikinis or whatever. And I think those are opportune moments that one needs to grab and latch onto to say that I'm actually feeling embarrassed. What I actually saw now, this is how it leaves me feeling, to engage with children. Yes, it's difficult, but with practice, if we start slowly, start with little things, it's certainly going to open the dialogue, but it's going to enable your child to feel comfortable and safe to come forward. Because I think the one thing we need to understand is that disclosure is not a single event. It's not something that happens immediately or purposefully. Children are often afraid to tell. I'm not sure if you saw the headlines last week with the Sidney Frankel multi-billionaire, who was the most revered characters in this country and had a string of victims that he had victimized, sexually violated. And there are many people like that, not only in the white communities or black communities, but even in our Muslim communities. As we speak, people high up in the hierarchy who are so revered are perpetrators. And this is a challenge. This is why I'm saying that children don't always disclose. It takes them a lifetime sometimes to disclose, simply because they've been coerced, intimidated, threatened into silence, and often told that if you tell, you will not be believed. I will tell them that you asked for it. You're a slut if it's a female. You're a whore. Those kind of modus operandi are used on children. And therefore, we find that children don't tell, and sometimes they are afraid to tell their parents.
They're afraid, and they're absolutely guilt-ridden because they also obviously feel it's my fault. I did something to encourage this. And very sadly, and as sick as it may sound, whilst that is happening, whilst they're being violated like that, they're also getting pleasure out of it, which is very, very sad. They shouldn't be, because they're way too young to be experiencing that.
They are awakened to programs which they are not ready yet for. And there's confusion. And when there's a lot of confusion, what does it lend itself to? Trauma. And then often we find self-destructive, self-defeating behavioral patterns which affects their trajectory, their life course. Sometimes the victim then becomes a victimizer or resorts to self-destructive behavioral patterns where we see the substance abuse, we see self-mutilation, depression, unexplained depression. It's usually that bad behavior, mad behavior, but behind all of that, if we unpack those layers, there's huge and deep sadness, like you said, the guilt, because I have dealt with many survivors who were children and victims of sexual abuse, and I've been able to work with them through a long period, and it's like 15 years, and some of them actually wrecked with guilt because they said, but we liked it when it happened. Initially we didn't, and we liked it. And now sitting with it, they blame themselves.
And they feel repulsed by the whole...
Indeed, and therefore the self-mutilation.
Do they ever come to closure? You know, you indicated you worked with people 15 years hence. Do they reach a point of closure when you're able to say to them, it was not your fault?
So I'm glad you're asking that. Having dealt with specific cases, yes, it's been a long journey. The journey to healing is not a quick fix. They're not 100%, but they are able to cope now daily with the operational functions and also to manage daily stresses and their family. The victims that we've dealt with, the self-mutilation has been so severe, the intensity and the guilt feelings have resulted in them wanting to take their lives. So attempted suicides and the suicidal ideations are usually engulfing the life of the victims. So what I'm saying is that dialogue is important, because by engaging with your child, you're actually saying to your child, it's okay to talk about it. And you can come to me. So should anything ever happen to the child, or should the child be witness something, the child would feel comfortable to say, I can go and talk to my parent. Because in our studies that we've conducted, we did a global action survey in November last year. And we reached out to more than 2,000 learners. And what the learners indicated was, these are primary school children, that their source of sex and sexuality was from external sources, so outside of the home environment. And of course, some of them had very distorted notions of sexuality. And we want to propagate and promote positive sexuality, where people need to love, revere and cherish their bodies and appreciate, to defer sex. And from a Sharia compliant lifestyle, I think that is just the ideal platform to engage with children.
Let's take an ad break. Dr. Shaida Umar is my guest. We're talking about Child Protection Week, and when we get back, we're going to also ask the question, is there anything we can do for victims to become perpetrators themselves? So all of that and more coming up on the show right after the ad break. Do stay with us. Welcome back. My guest is Dr. Shaida Umar. She is the director of the Teddy Bear Clinic. We're here to talk about Child Protection Week, but we're also going to ask her what exactly is it that the Teddy Bear Clinic is involved in, and what is their relation to or collaboration with Child Protection Week. So do stay with us. You've heard the question, Shaida. Would you like to respond?
Yes, so before we even continue, I'm giving you this bracelet. As you can see,
Shukran.
We've got 365 there, on each bead 365, denoting that child protection is for 365 days. It's every second, every minute, every hour. It's all the time. Child protection is all the time.
Not just this one week that we focused on.
Not the week that we focused on. Yes, we use the week to highlight the challenges that exist out there and to continue with outreach. But our outreach and awareness and mobilization and advocacy is 365 days. And we urge everybody that child protection should be all the time. And it's not your business, it's not my business,
it's our business.
Our business, everybody's business. I also want to give this bookmarker to you. That is what we are actually handing out. We hand out to our children and to communities.
All right, talk to us very quickly about it, because I see traffic lights at the back.
Okay, so that's because traffic lights are present everywhere and people can relate and identify with the colors. So red signifies and symbolizes danger, and we say stop. So the moment somebody is being hurt or violated, we are trying to instill the sense of saying they actually need to say stop and shout out. And of course, orange is amber, caution and warning. And we say to the children that you need to tell someone you trust, or continue telling someone until they actually hear you. And green means go, so take action. You know, after thinking about it, you need to take action. And this is what we try and encourage children out there in communities in terms of these bookmarkers. As you can see, I've handed that to you, and we've got emergency numbers there. for children to contact.
How is the Teddy Bear Clinic to your other support groups like Childline and other such groups?
So thank you for asking that question. I think it's important to understand that Childline is a toll-free line, a 24-hour facility where people can phone in anytime. Now, the Teddy Bear Clinic falls under the Teddy Bear Foundation, and we provide medical legal support and psychosocial support. So providing medical examinations to victims of child abuse from babies until the age of 18 years. So we see newborn babies that have been violated, that have been physically assaulted, sexually assaulted, and the doctors complete a J88 form, which is then submitted to the court. The psychosocial support is, of course, therapy, assessments, court preparation, community outreach at schools, and then we also work with young sex offenders, the victimizers, which you are aware of that program. So children who are sexually aggressive towards other children.
Are they, and I think I asked you this question, or I said I was going to put this question to you after the ad break, can they be rehabilitated? You know, I mean, they perform such atrocious acts towards other children and other human beings. What is it that drives them, and is there hope?
Okay, so if we look at the work that we've done with these children, we've worked with more than 6,000 children since 2001.
Sure.
These are young sex offenders as young as 5 and 6 years old who've been responsible for penetration and attempted penetration. What we found that there are many risk factors that contribute towards this behavior. And in our research, we found that many of these children come from backgrounds of adversity. So they've been victims of, subjected to abuse themselves, or a history of victimization where it may be physical abuse, sexual abuse, and emotional abuse. What is interesting is that many of these victims have not all been victims of sexual abuse. A lot of them have come from backgrounds where there's been physical assault, continuous physical assault. So they've been subjected to very punitive behavior. But other risk factors are domestic violence, where they are exposed to repeated conflict between parents and altercations. And we also have found that these children are also living in a culture of violence. So it becomes normalized. They become socially conditioned to that kind of behavior, where it becomes the norm and it's okay. And if one wants to assume a sense of power and control, that is how one asserts one's masculinity. So I think that's one of the risk factors. But other risk factors we have found are single-parent households, where it's a female household and a lack of adequate male role model. In some cases, we have found that there are male role models, but they are not emotionally available to the child. Media, the influence of media has a huge role to play, where children are exposed to explicit sexual images, often in a position not to able to process that, and they make up their own answers and reenact what they've seen. So, those are some of the risk factors, but we also need to look at high sleep density. With overcrowding, there are challenges, again, children witnessing sexual acts and not being able to make sense of it. And I could continue. There are numerous risk factors. And of course, it requires a collaborative and a collective action. But you asked me a question earlier about the success rate. We've had children coming through our program, and we had an independent consultant evaluating the success rate. 95% of the children that had undergone this intervention had not reoffended. So, of course, that's...
Alhamdulillah for that.
So that is the cases that have not probably come to the authorities, but we are very hopeful and optimistic about the intervention.
Shada, let's take an example of a young girl or a young man who was exposed to violence, whatever form of violence, in his growing years, and finds that he becomes a perpetrator himself of whatever, whether it's sexual or physical violence or even emotional abuse. what sort of private rehabilitation or counselling can he undergo to fix himself or herself, and would you advocate that?
So, Julie, what we would first do is evaluate, do a thorough assessment, look at whether...
I'm talking for someone outside of coming to the Teddy Bear Clinic. You know, maybe they are in the fortunate position of being able to afford private care.
Okay.
What are you suggesting for them?
Well, then they, you know, a perpetrator, Julie, I would not recommend private care. If somebody has committed sexual violence, sexual assaults, they need to go through the system.
Are they willing to? Are they willing to ask
but if
for
we
help?
are aware, I think what you need to understand is the legislation stipulates if anybody is aware, has a slight indication, a doubt or a suspicion, that person has to be reported. Failure to report it is a criminal offence. The Sexual Offences Act Section 54 stipulates that it's not a moral obligation, it's a legal obligation. They need to enter the system. So I'm not going to encourage people to go and see private therapists. And again, it's not a quick fix. It would require long-term therapy. It's like, you know, drawing the analysis to somebody who is an alcoholic. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic, because it's an addiction. Once a sex offender, always a sex offender.
Or
So-
an abuser.
An abuser.
Uh-huh.
So, you know, the treatment would be lifetime. It's like the Al-Anon, where you join these groups and you have to remain in that system forever.
But you must want to change, obviously.
And that's very important, acknowledging responsibility for one's actions, demonstrating victim empathy. And as far as the intervention is concerned, one would look at relapse prevention. So look at the triggers that would pose risks in committing a sexual offense again, because there are certain triggers, you know, the buttons that get pushed each time, and of course gives impetus to the sexual violation.
Right, we're almost coming to the end of the show, so let's talk about Child Protection Week. You've spoken about the bookmarkers and the little bracelets. What's happening in and around the schools and in public places as far as child protection awareness is concerned?
Okay, so as I've mentioned, our child awareness is all the time, but during this week we continue to do what we always do. We go out to schools, we talk to learners, we go to ECD facilities, your young children in the early childhood development centers, where we speak to them about their rights, their responsibilities. We speak to them
And
about...
how do they respond?
Oh, they're amazing. They
what
engage.
What are the type of things you say to them? I mean, they're little toddlers you're talking about.
So we would demonstrate to them, you know, if somebody, we would take dolls and props.
Yes.
And if we punched this doll, is it okay? If we pinch the doll, if we ringed the ear. So we get to, if we pinch their bottom, their buttocks, is that okay? So we teach children like that. And it's amazing the responses that we get, because we elicit such strong and evoke such strong emotions in the children. So we work with ECD facilities, primary schools, senior schools, but we also work with educators and the school governing bodies as well, supporting staff, because we find that they are the ones that pick up challenges on the school grounds or identify situations that are risky. So often we find that educators do not have the knowledge or the skill to identify abuse, to manage and to report it, how to report it, because often we find there's mismanagement of that. So we continue to do that, but we also do a lot of outreach at taxi ranks, antenatal facilities, because these are pregnant mothers, and getting them to understand and appreciate how to protect their children. So we're talking to potential mothers. We also go out to other hospital settings, to recreation centers, to hospitals. We have exhibitions. We had a huge launch in Western Cape at the Cape Flats in Langa, where there was, you know, we know that it's gang infested. We did a launch and we handed out these bookmarkers and gave an educational presentation to everybody. So that's the kind of reach out that we do, but we also work with other NGOs, and community-based organizations in creating awareness, because we find that we have become a reactive society and we need to be more proactive and look at more prevention programs.
Let's look at your regular households. No doubt our children are exposed to media. They are aware, or most of our children are aware, that it's Child Protection Week. And alhamdulillah, let's assume that we're all living in safe zones and safe homes and safe families. But if they question us, Shaida, how do we respond to them? And, on the assumption that we don't have violence happening in our immediate confines, how do we respond to them without frightening them?
Well, again, I think it's going back to basics, Julie. We need to start talking to children. Children listen to news. When I listen to my grandchildren, they know. I had my 7-year-old asking me last week about rape. And then I sat down and I said, and I explained to her, I went back to basics, explaining that this is not something that I would engage in or normally talk about, but it's hurting somebody when we do something without someone's permission, and that a child is not ready for this. So it's going back to basics. I really feel that people should firstly get in touch with their own sexuality. We need to start feeling comfortable with ourselves. If we're not comfortable with ourselves, we're not going to be able to engage with children. So that is something that people need to rehearse and talk to themselves about it and say it's okay. In order to protect children, we need to do that.
And undoubtedly, for those people who are uncomfortable about having these type of conversations, I'm sure that if they go to a good bookstore, they'd be able to get 1 or 2 books that would give them ideas of how to engage with their little ones or even their older children as far as these issues are concerned. And in closing, I'm sure you have a very strong message for our viewers this morning as far as child protection and no to sexual and no to abuse to women and children, and even boy children. We know that they also are abused.
You are saying something that is so critical and important, that nobody's protected from the scourge. Females, males, everybody, we're all susceptible and vulnerable.
And women are also abusers. Let's not forget that.
That's so important. So what I would like to say to everybody is stand up, speak out and break the silence. We need to break this silence and cycle of abuse. If we do not stand up and speak out, the scourge will continue.
Not only to yourself, coming in for sharing your knowledge, your expertise, and these lovely little gifts with us this morning on, obviously, Child Protection Week. Thank you indeed, and have a wonderful Ramadan.
Shukran dalilan.
Assalamu alaikum to you. That was Dr. Shaida Umar from the Teddy Bear Clinic talking about Child Protection Week, and it's time to wrap up with our beautiful thought of the day, which is, if you want happiness for an hour, take a nap. If you want happiness for a day, then go fishing. If you want happiness for a year, inherit a fortune. Who'd be so lucky? If you want happiness for a life, then help someone. And on that note, then, in this Mubarak month of Ramadan, inshallah, we do know that everyone's putting out a helping hand. A big thank you to the production team. And till Saturday morning, as always, it is Assalamu alaikum and Khuda Hafiz from me, Julie Alli.
يا هلا 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 حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا